Good afternoon, everyone. This is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sublimation Graphics and Tutorials here on Facebook. If you're joining us on YouTube, please be sure to come join our Facebook group. And of course, if you're catching us live on Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch all of our videos after they are live in our neatly organized playlists. Jasper is also here in the background with his Lammy toy. So if you hear some squeaking, that's just him saying hello. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to use the template I've created and sublimate cone style masks. Now, before we dive into this tutorial, I am just going to be very straightforward and say that this is not an opportunity for you to post your findings, your personal beliefs, your religious beliefs, or any of that other nonsense. I don't care if you believe in the virus. I don't care if you think that masks are stupid. And I really don't care if you have some conspiracy theory about this. I feel I have to say that because if we do see any of those comments on our YouTube or on our Facebook posts, we will delete them. Normally we don't go around deleting comments, but you know, this is not what we're about. So we are doing this tutorial because it's something that people wanted to do, and I had the opportunity to do it because I made some of these masks for myself. So with that in mind, first let's talk about the mask itself. Now, if you're not familiar with the cone style, it's the ones that look like this. And we're calling them cone style because they don't lay flat. They sort of dome up in the center. And in my opinion, that's actually something that makes them better, but a lot of people like the flat ones because they're easy to sublimate. Now, first and foremost, if you are selling masks with your business, you 100% need to make sure that you are including some type of disclaimer with them that these are not medical grade, they do not guarantee any protection from anything, etc., etc. Now, this is very, very important because this protects you and your business from any liability, and we live in a sue happy world, so make sure that you guys are protecting yourselves. Now, I know there's a lot of different types of masks that are out there, and the recommendations for what we should be wearing to protect ourselves has varied, or I guess it has evolved over the last 90 days since the coronavirus kind of took off in the United States, and of course, pulling worldwide data for every country in the world that's dealing with this. So with that in mind, one of the reasons why I chose this particular mask for myself, and I do have some of the hand-sewn quilted cotton ones, they're not as breathable, they're not as comfortable either. So one of the reasons why I went with this one, first and foremost, was because of the fabric composition. So the external is polyester, and then the interior is cotton. There's been a lot of, like I said, there's been a lot of modifications made to what's being recommended, but the Department of Defense has done adequate testing and determined that this combination filters over 70% of particles and moisture. And then of course, that's the goal. The goal is not specifically to not spread the virus, as in the virus itself, I guess, but the virus needs moisture particles from our breathing, from us talking, to spread, and this helps keep more of those, close to us and helps us breathe less in. So that's why I chose this one, was because if the Department of Defense is recommending it for the men and women here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, then I'm gonna assume it's good enough for me too. So another thing that I like about this is that the cone style feature of them gives them just more room around your face and nose, and this means that you can breathe easier. Now, I know that one of the big issues with a lot of the different types of masks that are out there is that they're not very breathable, and people who have any number of conditions, including asthma, are finding it more difficult to use them. Now, one of the things about that is that if you are a mouth breather, you are going to face more difficulty with breathing with something over your mouth than someone who is a nasal breather. Now, so for me personally, that is a factor because I breathe through my nose, I don't breathe through my mouth. So that makes it, that does factor into the comfort of this. But as someone who, if you've been in my group for the last year and a half, then you know that I have very damaged lungs. It plays a very big role into how I live my life. And it's made a lot of changes to my life way before this, just to prevent me from getting sick, because, something like the common cold or a light respiratory infection that you face, for me, can take me months to get over. And during that months, I'm putting my lungs through more stress and more damage. And lung tissue is really sensitive. That's kind of something that I feel like we take for granted when we're just like, oh, it's just a cough, it's just a common cold, because those things are actually not in our lungs. They're actually in our bronchial tubes. So we don't really realize that our lung tissue itself is so sensitive that something like what I went through, which was, a combination of extreme asthma and an allergy that just kind of led to almost 2 years of me being in a 24/7 asthma attack. But like a really extreme asthma attack where nothing would resolve it. It was very unpleasant. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I do know that people are saying, that's one of the issues when it comes to wearing masks, is they have difficulty breathing. So for me, I'm going to tell you that my personal feeling is that these ones are the most breathable and most comfortable to wear that I have tried. And because my lungs are so damaged, I am obviously taking necessary precautions to protect myself if I do go places where there is the potential to come in contact with it. I'm not going to live my life in fear. I just, am choosing to be proactive because I want to be here to give you guys lots of tutorials for many years to come. So these masks in particular, I got from Yellow Crayons. If you're not familiar with Yellow Crayons, they are a direct-to-garment printing business here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. They do offer fulfillment services. So for those of you who want to order bulk runs of shirts that you can sell that are, dark colored or cotton, they're a great option to go to. They also do guest videos where they show you guys direct-to-garment printing and let you guys ask questions and talk about their equipment, just to give you guys another avenue to learn if that seems like something you might want to add to your business. And of course, since sublimation is limited to light colored garments in polyester, direct-to-garment and of course white toner printing are definitely two things we are happy to teach you guys to give you more options for your business. They are not traditionally blank suppliers, but these masks are sourced from the United States. So with that in mind, if you want to support them, the link to their Facebook page is in our video description. You don't want to order through their website because that's for full price masks for people who are buying them. Now, the going rate for a sublimated mask is going to be easily $15 to $20. I would say it really kind of depends on if you have to do all the work to set up the file or if it's ready to go. That would be the difference between me charging $15 and $20. So just, kind of keep that in mind. Of course, because they're not a blank supplier, they're not buying hundreds of thousands of masks at a time. They're buying them, because they are selling them through their business to their customer base and are simply offering them to our group as well for those who would like them. But if you are looking for like the bulk run where you can get them for $2 or $2.50, by ordering a couple hundred or a couple thousand, then I recommend you just head over to Sublimation Unchained and you will absolutely find some posts in there for them. So now let's talk about the free template that is being provided. The link is in the video description and it will stay free. There's no reason for me to charge for this. So what you're going to see is that there's two different sets of files. So first there's going to be a PDF that looks like this. And this is your mask jig template. Now I printed mine today on cardstock and that's what we're going to use. I found this to honestly be the easiest, most effective option. Cardboard was a little bit too thick, but you can certainly use that. And if you have a vinyl cutter, you can actually take this and, cut it out on your vinyl cutter. So even better that you didn't have to cut it out by hand. I didn't try to reuse them and I don't really recommend that you do either because you will get ink residue, around the edges from the overage of our template. And then the second set of files is going to be the template itself, and I'm going to show you guys how to fill this in Affinity Designer. I've provided you with a PNG format, a Photoshop format, PSD, sorry, and a SVG format. So even if you're using Cricut or Silhouette software, you will be able to use this template to create your face mask. So one important thing, I did mention this last week when I was, just showing these masks. You want to make sure that you measure these after you pre-press them before you print your template. So a good sort of flow, I guess I would say, is to pre-press your mask and then get them all set up, get them all taped to your jig, and then go through and measure them and print off your designs accordingly so that you don't end up wasting paper and ink. And the reason why is because anytime you buy anything, you are going to find that it's not always exact. And this is just the nature of manufacturing. Some things have less variances than others. So for example, if you buy aluminum bookmarks, those have less variances than a t-shirt simply because they are cut usually from a set template and like a laser machine that has far better accuracy. A lot of times garment substrates, there's some good variables. And it could just be that this curve is more on one than it is on the other, or maybe it's just a little bit higher or it's longer. So when I made the template, I tried to take all of that into configuration. So the vertical version of this should be pretty on point, and the curve of it is leaving enough room that you can kind of move your mask within this space and it should fit perfectly. Where you're going to run into needing to modify it is the horizontal axis of your mask. So I'm going to use this one as an example because when I flattened this on my seam, like I'm going to show you, see if you look at the bottom, the mask extended past the template. So I, wanted to make sure that I did measure that accordingly to make sure that everything fits right. So this just helps you make sure that you don't end up wasting a mask and also don't waste ink and paper. Now I am going to make a little error today so you guys can see that, so you can troubleshoot that as well. So I think that's all I have to show you guys about the template. And like I said, this is a good product to be selling right now. It's normally I tell you guys not to sell stuff that isn't evergreen. But this is something that has purpose probably for at least 6 months. So with that in mind, these are kind of fun and fashionable. I mean, the ones I've made for myself that I posted in the group, I've been pretty excited to wear because I don't know, I'm kind of like dorky like that. And also I'll just show you mine. This is one of the ones that I tested. So I didn't actually line up the pattern properly, but I adjusted the earpieces because I wanted it to fit a little bit tighter. But it does breathe well. You can see I've got like a space here for even when I'm talking, and it fits nice and snug here. And then I like to put my sunglasses on, and then I kind of look like the Unabomber, which I realize is not a funny joke to make, but it is kind of funny to wear really big sunglasses and a face mask in Walmart. So anyways, let's go ahead and I'm going to switch you guys over to the computer and I will show you guys how to fill your template, and then I will show you guys how to sublimate these cone style masks. Today I'm working in Affinity Designer. This is my preferred design program, and if you are looking for something that has Photoshop-like capabilities but is a little bit more user-friendly and affordable, then I highly recommend this program. I know I haven't really done kind of a conclusive review of it, but I have been using it since it was first beta tested a couple years ago, and I've learned a lot, and there's still a lot I have to learn. But I do really enjoy this program. And it's usually $50 for a lifetime license, which means one price for the rest of your life. But because of the coronavirus, they actually have had it on special for 50% off. And that includes the iPad app as well. So I'm using a Windows laptop. If you are using the iPad version, it may look a little bit different. I highly recommend that if you have questions about the Mac version, or the iPad app that you refer to the Affinity Designer group, or just head over to the website and look in the forums for answers to your questions about where certain tools might be located. Regardless of what program you're using, you're going to be able to fill this template using some sort of clipping mask feature. Now, this does look a little bit different, whether you're using Silhouette or Photoshop or GIMP or Cricut, Corel. So just kind of keep that in mind, that what you're trying to do is use the shape that we've created to clip your design into it. I've gone ahead and opened up the Affinity Designer file that I created. Once again, there are multiple file formats available for you in that free download. The link is in our video description, so just go ahead and check that out. I have provided you with both sides, which is relevant if you are trying to do a whole face that's different on both sides. So let me rotate this so I can kind of explain so you guys can visualize this. I also, just to save us some time, I imported our Dia de los Muertos graphic. I know a lot of you guys like this. It came from Adobe stock. I just licensed it for personal use to use for myself, and I did provide that link as well so that you guys can license it if you so choose. I will not be doing mass templates. I generally don't put out designs that are not evergreen, and something like this I feel like is not necessarily worth my time when I have such a long list of special requests from you guys. Okay, so her mouth is pretty much the same all the way across, but maybe you have a face that has a piercing over here or a scar, some sort of difference between the two. If that happens to be the case, you may want to be using both sides of the mask template that are provided. So first, what we want to do is in our layers panel, we're going to move this below our mask template. And if your plan is to do a full face where both sides are different, then I recommend you move each half closer. So we'll just pick one side and we will move it closer until they just start to overlap. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that it's overlapping. This is going to give you the best chance at getting that seamless look when you create your face. I will tell you straightforward that it is a little bit more difficult to line it up evenly if that is the style face that you're doing, simply because where it divides may not line up accordingly or evenly. Like if it's a tooth, you might have one half of the tooth look shorter than the other just because of how it lines up. So for me personally, I'm finding that it's easier to just do half of the face and then duplicate. So with that in mind, I'm just going to uncheck one side of this. I'm going to line up my my Dia de los Muertos so it's about where I want it and it's halfway. And then I'm going to drag it into my second side of my face. So if I click on my second group, see we unchecked that one side, so I'll just check it again, uncheck so you can see it. So if I click on our second group, you see where it says place picture here. Now all we're going to do is click and drag that underneath the words place picture here. So when you do that, you'll see that that sort of opaque blue bar appears that shows you it's going to go underneath it. Now if you hover and hold this, if you hold it right in the edge, see where that little rectangle is in our layers panel, then it's just going to become part of this and it's not going to fill our space. And if you hold it underneath the actual mask shape, it's just going to appear below it. And all you have to do is look at your screen. So if I just release that, you can see what's going on. So we want to click and drag underneath the name. Okay. So now that we've done that, we can click on our graphic. So yours might be a picture, maybe it'll be clip art, whatever it is that you're using. And we're just kind of going to move it around until we reach that halfway point that we're looking for. So one of the things I try and focus on is going just a little bit over halfway. So if we look at this, if I zoom in to make it easier for you guys, if we look at this little dip in her lip is obviously the halfway, but I went just a little bit over so that we had a little wiggle room when we print our design. Also keep in mind that this top part here is going to be where the actual bridge of the nose is. So if you're trying to kind of make the mouth line up with the mouth of the wearer, you want to make sure it's a little bit higher up. So I'm just going to drag it up just a little bit because we want that mouth part to be over the mouth, because this part's going to be the chin and then underneath the chin. And also our template is of course made a little bit bigger than the actual mask size is, so we'll get nice full bleed. So once you've created your one side, all you're going to do is right click and duplicate, and then we'll go up here and we will flip it horizontally. And then we just need to kind of twist them a little bit so that they fit on a letter size paper and can be printed without issue. Now I like that this template does fit on a letter size paper because it makes it a little bit easier for you to calculate your price. Now just a reminder, the reason why I did that is so that these pieces would be the same and they would be easy to line up. I have once again provided you with the two separate halves, this one that we originally unchecked so we wouldn't see it and use it, if you are doing a full face. So make sure you go back, just rewind back to where I talked about that, if that is what you were trying to do, if both sides are going to be different. I have already measured to make sure this fits the mask that we're going to be sublimating today, but just as another reminder, if you find that you need to adjust your template, you will do that by removing your graphic. You should do it beforehand is what I should say. And then click on the actual where it says place picture here, and then you can just extend it out as you need. You'll notice that there is also the outline piece, so you want to make sure that that is extended accordingly as well, or you can just uncheck that so that it's out of your way. The outline is really just served so you guys know that it's there in case you import this in a way that you can't see this white graphic. And then we'll go ahead and click and drag that back in to fill it. So if you need to modify, you want the size, you want to make sure that you do it that way. And you can, of course, do exact measurements by clicking on the transform panel and entering your dimensions here. That was pretty quick to fill the template as it normally is. So I'm going to go ahead and switch you guys back over to our workspace. I've already printed this design. So we will go ahead and show you the next step, which is how to sublimate this mask. So now that I've showed you how to set up your template, let's go ahead and talk about the other tools that we're going to need. So we have our masks, which I showed you at the beginning. Once again, these are polyester exterior and cotton interior. I'm calling them cone style simply because they don't lay flat and they cone over the nose and mouth, which, as I explained before, in my personal opinion, it makes them more breathable. If you guys have been in my group for a while, once again, you know that I have a lot of issues with my lungs. Asthma is like the least of my problems in comparison to all the other issues I face with my lungs. So I find these really breathable and very comfortable to wear, which is why I actually bought a couple from Yellow Crayons. So we have our jig. When you print it out, your jig template will just look like this. And I make sure that the lines are nice and thin so you can cut them easily with scissors. And of course, if you still have a vinyl plotter, you can go ahead and use that as well, which is a great way to kind of have that cutting out your templates while you're printing off your designs and getting other things ready. So I went ahead and cut out 2 of those. And I just did this out of cardstock. I think that cardstock does work best. You could probably use cardboard as well. And honestly, I have done these masks simply using just a little protective paper. So there's a lot of versatility in terms of that. of something that you put on the inside. And the purpose of putting something on the inside is to prevent any ink transference onto parts underneath that you don't want to get ink on. Now, this is not because these masks are thin and the ink bleeds through. It's because our transfer is larger than our side, and therefore, you know, if this is like this, when it's pressed, the ink from our transfer is going to go ahead and get on that edge. So we have our transfers printed as well, both printed with Affinity Designer. I showed you the Dia de los Muertes, which is from Adobe stock, and I did provide a link for that in our video description. And then this was just a photo of the Joker's face off of Google that my friend sent and wanted for his father. Keep in mind that just because it's on Google does not mean it's free for you to use, and it is not protected. You definitely should not be going ahead and selling anything that you find a graphic on Google, because that is considered a violation of most copyright laws, and simply the rights of the person who posted that graphic. This is going to be used for personal use, which still is not technically okay. Just so we are clear, I don't condone stealing images off of Google. But for this example, this is what a friend of mine wanted. So much like you guys, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And then the last thing that we'll want is our adhesive spray, which you can use any repositional adhesive spray that you would like. The one that I'm using is Loctite. You can find this at Walmart and some craft stores. It's relatively cheap, that's why I use it. And then of course, some heat tape. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to give these a pre-press. Now we know the importance of pre-pressing to help get our get any substrate released of any moisture. But for this, we are going to do a pre-press so that we will best be able to fold our mask right along the seam. So I'm going to do them one at a time just so we can go through the process twice, for those of you who like the repetition. Now I am still getting used to how to use our Sun Pack light ring. So you have to bear with me as I make some adjustments here. Okay, I think that'll be good. So I have my press set at 380 degrees. And the first thing we're going to do, like I said, is we're just going to do a pre-press. And this is going to help us warm up those polyester fibers so that we can get a nice good pinch on the seam of the mask to help give us the best luck at a seamless look. So I'm going to put just a Teflon sheet over top of this while we're pre-pressing, just in case there's anything on my press that might transfer onto this. So our pre-press, we only need about 10-15 seconds. It really kind of depends on the humidity where you are, so keep that in mind. We're doing this at 380 degrees, and I am using my 16x20 heat press from PressNRelease. I purchased this through acesdeals.net, and you can find that link in our video description. Okay, so again, this was just our pre-press. So once we take that off the press, we're going to give it a nice little stretch, and then we're going to stick our finger right underneath that hem line and see where that seam is. That's where we want to fold. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it right on that. And again, you just give this a little stretch because it's nice and hot and pliable. All right, and then we'll set that back up there and we're going to do our real pre-press. So I'm going to put my Teflon sheet back on there. We are using medium pressure today. Medium erring on the side of firm. So if you're using a digital heat press, you're going to aim for a 6 or a 7 pressure-wise. Now this is our full pre-press, which we're going to do for 30 seconds. And if you are not aware, pre-pressing is important with polyester, well, with any fabrics really, but specifically with sublimation garments or fabrics, because when we pre-press any type of fiber, it pushes out all of the moisture and then that causes shrinkage. Now, if you think about your clothes, when you take them out of the dryer, they often feel like they have shrunk. Now, we know that they didn't actually shrink It's simply the moisture has been evaporated out of them. When you are doing sublimation, if your transfer is on top of your fabric and it is shrinking while that ink is going through that conversion process from a liquid to a gas, that is what causes ghosting. It's actually the #1 cause of ghosting, so much more likely to be the cause of your ghosting than your transfer accidentally jumping. So that's like a huge misconception, and I try and make sure I always address it in my videos because it's not really the cause of ghosting. The main cause of ghosting is that your fabric has shrunk while the ink was hot on top of it. In terms of fabrics, in terms of hard substrates, typically ghosting happens because the substrate is still hot, and that's why it's important that it gets cooled off quickly. And watch hard substrate videos to cover that. So next, we'll go ahead and take our jig that we cut out. And again, I just cut this out of cardstock. And I'm just going to go ahead and slide that in there. Now, the reason why the jig is nice is because it's already curved for that cone part of your mask. And I'm just going to go ahead and flip this up and spray a little bit of adhesive spray so that I can flatten this back down in here and make sure that it's nice and flat. So I'll go ahead, just give this a shake. Once again, we're using Loctite Repositional Adhesive Spray. You can use any adhesive spray that you want. I really highly recommend Conde Pro Spray. It's just that I don't order enough stuff from them to warrant the cost of shipping just to ship Pro Spray. So I tend not to have it for that reason. So I'm just going to give this very light dusting. You don't need much. And then this will just give me a nice, good opportunity to flatten this out, to flatten that out and make sure that I've got my seam line on the edge like I want it. So now I'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. And this is sort of like, the same method you would use with basting spray for quilting or something like that. So there is that. And I'm just going to make sure, I really am going to kind of stretch and pull that because we want to make sure this is nice and flat before we press. All right. Okay, so we'll start on this side, and I'm going to put 2 little pieces of tape here to secure this and also to prevent any ink overflow from getting on that little piece. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that the jig template is actually longer depth-wise this way than the template for the mask. And that is to make sure that you have plenty of room to work with here and to try and avoid any ink overflow from getting on the earpieces. All right, so we know that our nose, if we look at this, our nose is the part that's more pointy, and it is a little easier to see in person. So we'll start with our transfer. We'll get that nice and lined up with our mask. Now I'm just going to turn this so you guys can see. What we want to do is just check to make sure our mask has not extended past our transfer anywhere, and we can also double check to make sure our tape is providing adequate coverage for overflow. Okay, and then because we can still see the edge of our design here, I mean, I know it's a little harder for you guys, but we can make sure that we've got this lined up how we want. So I've got like my mouth right here and my nose right here, and I think that's pretty good. Now we can just go ahead and tape this, or you can spray it on. You really have both options. I'm going to tape it because I think it'll be easier to secure it. But again, always do what you feel most comfortable with and what works best for your business. Okay, so now before we press this, we got to make sure we put a piece of protective paper down. And the reason why, again, is because we have this extra ink around the edge and we don't want that to get on our rubber mat. We will set that down. We will put another piece of protective paper on top. And now we're going to go ahead and press for 380 degrees, or at 380 degrees for 45 seconds. These masks don't really need a lot of time, so that's definitely a perk. And if you're doing bulk runs, you can easily get these set up by doing all that pre-pressing, setting them all up on their jigs and taping them down, and then just be able to very quickly, slap them on, press, and you can of course press multiples at one time as well. And if I wasn't doing this in a video, things would go a little bit faster, but because I'm making sure that we cover everything for you guys, it does take a little longer. All right. Okay. We'll get our tape off of there. So go ahead, and there's our first side, so you guys can see it. We got very nicely on that edge. I'll go ahead and take this off. We're just gonna give this a little to cool it down quickly. And keep in mind that anytime you're doing something double-sided, you do want to make sure that it cools down on the one side completely so that you do not accidentally reactivate the ink, which can happen on that second press, especially if it's something that takes longer. So not really relevant in this one, but still a good practice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, because that adhesive spray that we sprayed has kind of evaporated with the heat, I'm going to go ahead and give this another quick spritz for the other side. Make sure it's nice and flat. This one doesn't want to cooperate with me, of course. I promise you, stuff like this only happens when I do live videos. Otherwise, it's not usually an issue. Okay. So we've got that on, and I'll put the little pieces of tape here just like we did last time to protect our earpieces. And again, if you were doing bulk runs of this, you could do all of these steps, along the way to kind of make it go faster for you guys. And for those of you who are printing these, I'm sure that you're going to find other little tricks that also work faster for you as well. So we've got our second transfer. And we're going to go ahead and we want to try and line this up in terms of where our nose and mouth are to the best of our ability. This is one of the reasons why when I showed this to you guys, showed filling in the template to you, I explained that it really is best to just duplicate because it'll give you a much better chance at lining this up and lining it up evenly than if you're trying to work with, the differences from one half of the face to the other. At least for, this. If you're doing the lay flat mask, it's definitely a little different. Okay, once again, got some nice wide tape. We'll get this secured. We're going to put our protective sheet down. We're going to set our mask down. We'll put our cover sheet over that. And medium firm pressure, 45 seconds, 380 degrees. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Don't forget that all the links for the products that we're using today, for the main products that we're using today, are all available in the video description. And you can find this video on our YouTube channel after it is live. We've got just about 12 seconds left on this mask, and then we'll go ahead and repeat the process on the second one to give you guys an opportunity to see it again going a little bit faster. I always like to hold the top of my press just so it doesn't jump up. And pull that paper off, pull our transfer off. Get our tape off, get our cardstock off. Okay.
Sorry. I was like trying to show it to you guys. So there's our mask, and we actually got we got this a little bit over on the seam, which is totally fine if you guys can see that slight color difference, which is honestly great because it makes that seam less visible. But I do try and line it up without overlapping. So there's that one. And now we'll go ahead and do our Joker mask. All right, so going a little bit faster this time, we're going to go ahead and start with our pre-press. Our pre-pre-press. So this is our 10 to 15 seconds that we are trying to get trying to make those fibers a little more pliable so that we can easily fold this flat. I'm going to cut some more paper while that's doing that. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and give it a little tug to stretch it. Stick your finger right up underneath that seam line. And then make sure we fold on the seam. And now we'll do our full pre-press to get any of that moisture out so we can prevent any ghosting. Once again, we're using medium firm pressure. If you have a digital heat press, that's going to be a 6 or a 7. So we will pre-press for about 25-30 seconds. It's pretty humid here because it's been raining for a week. So a little extra pre-pressing will definitely benefit us with our mask today. Ouch. A little hot. All right, so we'll go ahead and, oops, sorry, make sure you guys can see that. We will stick our template, jig template in there. Gonna give it a little spray with our Loctite repositional adhesive spray. Again, you can use any adhesive spray you'd like. So I'm gonna go ahead and spray that. Make sure I get that nice and flat. Add a little piece of tape there to protect our ends. And flip it over. We're gonna do the same thing on this side. And we'll go ahead and I'm just gonna put that tape on there again this time, just kind of save us a step. Okay, so we've got that nice on our template. We've got our seam line right on the edge there. We'll go ahead and set our first side. And remember that the side that's higher up pointed is the nose. So we'll go ahead and set this on. We'll check our edges to make sure that we've got nice, good coverage. Okay. And we've got, it's a little hard for you guys to see if I hold that down, but our Joker nose is right here and our Joker mouth is right here. Okay. Now we will stick our protective sheet up there, flip that over, cover it up, and we'll do 380 degrees for 45 seconds. I just want to thank you guys for joining us and being part of Sub That. Don't forget that if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, you'll want to do that. We do regular tutorials, so just watch for those notifications in the group and make sure that you select Get Notified so that you'll be able to follow our videos when they go live or find them later. We've got less than 10 seconds left here on this side. And don't forget, if you have questions or comments, you can leave them below and I will answer them after we are done. All right, we pull that up. We pull off this side of our transfer and our tape. And I'm just going to use the other half of this page. Ouch, this is hot. So I'll show you, I'll show you that nice up and close. It's very hot. We got it nice on the seam. Again, we're going to kind of shake this a little bit to let it cool off so that we don't have to risk accidentally reactivating the ink on the side that we already pressed. Let's give that a nice little press. And then grab my second transfer. And we're going to go ahead and line this one up accordingly. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and check our edges to make sure that we haven't gone over anywhere. Okay. And I think we've got our Joker nose and mouth, lined up about as perfect as we're going to be able to get it. You kind of have to eyeball it, you know, which again, this is why I showed you guys that it's best just to do half of the face and duplicate it. I did several rounds of testing the other way and it just proved inconsistent in getting it to line up. So that is why I am not showing that today. All right, last one. Once again, 380 degrees for 45 seconds. I am using printer jack paper and ink today with my Epson Workforce 7710. If you have used printer jack paper, then you know that it is a high release paper. So that is why we're using 45 seconds. Texprint XPHR is a high release paper. I believe the Koala paper is as well. Other papers, like if you're using just regular copy paper, which is not recommended, or if you're using ASUB, don't release as well onto fabrics. So you may need to do a little bit more time with those. All things with sublimation in terms of time and temp are more of a guide, and you really just have to work with your own tools to figure out what works for you. All right, pull that off. We'll get all of our, all of our tape off. All right. Now it looks pretty good. We've got our line right on our seam, which is really what we're going for. I know we had an overlap with the first one, but on the seam is what you're kind of aiming for. That way it looks very natural. It looks like the line belongs there. All right, so let me put this over here so we can see it a little bit better. And so I don't have to stand over the heat press. All right, let me see. Okay. All right, so let's pull our two masks forward. Now on this one, we didn't get quite to that edge. We didn't check to make sure that we were in the right place, and that is kind of the result of that. This one's just for me, so it's not really that big of a deal. But our Joker one came out perfect. We didn't have any ink bleed through on the back because we used our jig. We didn't have any on our earpieces because we made sure to use the tape. Our lineup looks great. And then our seam is right down the center where, you know, the seam is. So it looks a bit more natural. Our lineup on the Dia de los Muertos was also very good. As good as can be expected with a design like this, you know, that has lines and stuff like that. So really the only place where we failed, so to speak, was that we didn't make sure this was all the way over. And even with the overlapping, some people like the overlapping, like if you sell socks, a lot of people have that overlap with their socks and the color of the sock. So when it's on the face, it's not going to be noticeable. And frankly, if someone is close enough to notice, they're probably not maintaining social distancing. So there is your tutorial on how to do the cone style masks. I hope that this was thorough for you guys and answered all your questions. But as always, leave those questions and comments below. I will go ahead and answer them. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can find all of our videos after they are live. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.